Hello and welcome. This is an audio description that will give a brief background to Cecil King's life and work at the Hugh Lane Gallery, then describe the exhibition layout as well as 3 works by King from the collection. Between each audio description, there will be a short snippet of an interview between Cecil King's partner Oliver Dowling and Logan Sisley, curator of the exhibition. You can watch the entire 12-minute interview on the Hugh Lane Gallery YouTube channel. In this video, we shall also share altered images of the artworks we are discussing. They will be in the following order, moving left to right: original image of the artwork, high contrast colour image, and a black and white high contrast image. We have produced this audio description to celebrate the centenary of Cecil King's birth and to accompany the exhibition Cecil King, Present in Time, Future at the Hugh Lane Gallery, which runs until the 28th of November 2021. Currently on the screen is a black and white portrait photograph of Cecil King. He seems quite jolly, smiling and looking directly at the camera. He is an older man with a receding hairline and a face defined by laughter lines. He could be in his early 60s. In the photograph, King wears a dark tie and white shirt, tucked neatly behind the woolen jumper, topped off with a fine tweed jacket. Cecil King was born in 1921 in Rathdrum, County Wicklow. He worked in a printing company, McGowan's, building a successful business career, and didn't begin painting until his 30s. He had always been interested by art and had a keen eye for collecting artworks. As he began to collect more contemporary artworks, he became interested to know how they were made, so he began painting. In the 1950s, King's work was focused on form and shape, slightly influenced by Cubism, some of his early works focusing on Ringsend and the Docklands in Dublin. In 1959, he had his first exhibition in the Hendricks Gallery, which helped launch his career as an artist. As his career continued, he became exposed to artists such as Nicolas de Stael and Pierre Soulages, which encouraged him to experiment with abstraction and colour. In 1967, he met Barrett Newman, an American hard-edge abstractionist painter, which heavily influenced King's work. King's work evolved into exploring simple shapes and colour, but often had an element of optical illusion, giving the sense of movement and space. The style of art King is recognised for today. King used his business sense to contribute a great deal to the Irish art scene. Alongside his own successful practice, he was a founding member of Rusk, an international art exhibition held in Ireland every 4 years, and in 1977, the Hugh Lane Gallery hosted the exhibition. Rusk was about supporting young contemporary artists to expose their work to larger audiences, but also to expose Irish society to a more diverse art world. King was also a founding member of the Contemporary Irish Art Society, who purchased works by younger artists from public collections. All noble causes which link closely to the ethos behind the Hugh Lane Gallery. Other connections King has with the gallery include a retrospective of his art career being hosted in the gallery in 1981, a few years before his death in 1986. The Hugh Lane Gallery are grateful to have a number of King's artworks in the collection and the opportunity to celebrate the centenary of his birth. A description of the exhibition Cecil King, Present in Time, Future. The exhibition is in Gallery 17 and 16, located on the first floor of the new wing. The easiest way to reach these rooms is to turn right at the reception desk and use either the stairs or the elevator to bring us up to the first floor mezzanine, a bright and open modern space which looks back down to the ground floor. From the elevator and stairs, we move diagonally up toward the right into Gallery 17. This white space is quite large and is irregular in shape, with the right wall slanting at a diagonal up from the doorway. The space opens out to the left and is dimly lit with artificial lighting and a small triangular skylight above the angled wall to the right. The room is approximately 6 meters wide and 10 meters long. The exhibition consists of paintings and prints which are simple abstract artworks, focusing on block colours and graphic shapes. The artworks are very striking against the white walls and appear like windows of vibrant colour. To reach Gallery 16, where the exhibition continues, we exit Gallery 17 through a doorway halfway along the wall ahead, opposite where we entered. This leads us to a very bright space with a bridge leading across the new wing corridor. The ceiling has a long skylight stretching almost the length of the space. There are glass railings either side with a vault-like corridor below to our left and a glass window looking into the fern-filled courtyard to our right. In front of the window is a bronze sculpture of two horses as if galloping side by side. This is an artwork by artist Barry Flanagan. Behind us on the bridge to the left of Gallery 17 doorway is a single elevator which would bring us down to the ground floor of the new wing corridor. Continuing ahead, we enter Gallery 16, a small square room measuring 5 meters squared. It keeps the modern style of Gallery 17 but is slightly more dim with only a narrow skylight strip extending along the back wall opposite the doorway. The artwork in this room is less vibrant and more diverse, displaying a large square wall tapestry of autumnal warm colours and a digital screen to the left, showing an interview between Logan Sisley, the curator of the show, and Oliver Dowling, Cecil King's partner. To the right, an open doorway leads into Gallery 15, then further into Gallery 14, which display more modern artworks.
So Oliver, thank you so much for coming into the gallery, and we're here to talk about the life and work of Cecil King and to celebrate his contribution to the arts in Ireland in this the centenary year of his birth. And we have a display from the collection of his work, which we hope to open to the public when we can.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Logan. And first of all, I'd like to say the room looks absolutely wonderful. Yes, it's amazing to think it's a centenary of his birth. But as you say, he was born in Rathdrum in 1921. At the age of 12, he was sent to boarding school. I think one of his school reports said that he lived a very active social life. And he used to go to the Gate. So he was introduced to the arts and to the theatre at a very early age. Mm-hmm. It was through a friend, a pal of his at school, that he got work in Dundalk at a firm called McGowan's. They were printers. I think in the 40s he moved to Dublin.
And it's interesting, I mean, a very successful, he was the director of the company, a successful business career. And to make that kind of leap, to become a full-time artist is quite a brave move.
Yeah, but it in a way it was quite natural. It was as if it was the only thing he could do, because he started to collect. First of all, as when he was in Dundalk, he was very active in Onoiga, which is sort of separate. But he met Eric Patton, who was a painter, and then he came to Dublin and he bought a painting by Barbara Warren. And it was as a result of buying the painting that he became curious as to how it was made. And he started to take lessons, and he went to the studio of Neville Johnson. Mm-hmm.
Description of the artwork, November 1960. This painting is oil on canvas and measures 91.4 centimetres tall by 122 centimetres wide in landscape format. It is a roughly painted abstract painting of mostly monotone colours, consisting of a dull and smoky grey background with a flurry of brushstrokes horizontally strewn across the middle of the canvas. Through the prickly burst of grey tonal smudged brushstrokes are areas of vibrant ultramarine blue, painted in striking thick and flat brushstrokes. The chaotic brushstrokes of grey and blue stretch across the canvas left to right. The density of brushstrokes is more concentrated in the centre, and the row of brushstrokes bow in the centre as if weighed down, growing toward the bottom edge of the canvas. Slightly off-centre to the right, where the row begins to sag, a few dark grey, almost black brushstrokes extend like a stem or trunk toward the bottom edge of the canvas. The overall atmosphere of the painting is gloomy and isolated. perhaps describing the wintry month of November.
But he was very serious about it from a very early age, from the beginning, because he started painting in 1954, and he had his first exhibition in the Hendrix Gallery in 1959, which was one of the two top professional galleries in Dublin at the time. So he didn't. So he was taking it seriously right from the very beginning. And then, as time went on, he realised that he didn't have enough time to paint. He needed to paint all the time, because when he was working, he'd be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and sort of to make work and then go to make paintings and then go to work.
Describing the series of prints titled Berlin Suite, 1970. The Berlin Suite is an artwork of 6 similar abstract screen prints, which focus on simple nuances of pure colour and shape. Together the prints appear like windows revealing various striking colours behind. They measure 52.7 centimetres tall by 39.4 centimetres wide, and are displayed in thin silver frames in 2 rows of 3, forming a neat grid-like pattern. The shapes and colours are without texture or shadow, but the angles create a sense of depth and perspective, like looking through a window or moving through a doorway. The basic motif of these prints is a rectangular block of colour with the left, right and bottom edge rimmed by a striking border, which in 5 out of the 6 prints is a jet black. The border runs flat along the bottom edge, but as it travels up the left and right edge, it begins to taper away from the central space. Following the angle of the most outer border are concentric margins highlighting the separation between the external border and the inner block colour that fills the centre. Each of the 6 prints have subtle differences in the colours they use, the thickness of the bordering lines, and the angles in which they taper off, each composition giving a slightly different feeling. These prints are very evocative of a 3-dimensional space. They can be understood as a study of how simple elements such as colour and shape create an atmosphere or sense of place. A useful analogy could be to imagine the different elements as musical notes, harmonising with each other. A musician whose work might complement the Berlin series by King is the music of Brian Eno, which also is inspired by place. I would suggest following this description by listening to Brian Eno's album Music for Airports, particularly track 1-1. The following description will detail each of the 6 prints, beginning on the top row, moving left to right. The first print is dark in tone, with the central space filled with a deep royal blue that might be used in a uniform. The most outer black border is thick along the bottom edge, while thin along the sides, which run straight up the left and right edge of the print. Moving inwards toward the blue, there is a slightly thinner rim of khaki green, which tapers out from the blue centre. The green is highlighted by a thin and delicate white line separating the green from the blue. Print number 2. This print is the lightest of the series and holds the centre spot of the top row. The central space is filled with a bright olive green, and the outer rim is a thick border of blush pink separated from the green by a delicate pattern of thin lines. A thin sage green, followed by a warm muted purple, another sage green, then closest to the olive green, a slightly thicker milky cream line. The colours are so beautiful and fresh, they could be a zesty summer dessert. The angle of the border gives a sense of moving straight ahead as the angle of the lines begin moving up straight. Then at about 2/3, the lines angle outwards, opening the olive green space in the centre. The third print plays with the contrast between light and dark, with the central space filled with a pale marigold orange. This central space seems much more narrow as the thick and heavy black and grey borders creep in, as if they are stealing space from the bright centre. The black border is thicker than the grey, which sits inside, both lines moving out at a sharp angle toward the top left and right corners of the print. Floating on top of the bottom edge of the grey is a thin white line lifting the composition. The fourth print is the first from the left of the second row. It is hung directly beneath the first print and shares very similar colours of a uniform blue and khaki green, but in a different composition. The central rectangle is a khaki green which fills the space and pushes the black border into thin tapered edges. The black border, which tapers away from the centre, sits directly beside the khaki green. Along the bottom edge, floating on the top of the black, is a thick uniform royal blue, topped by a thinner white edge forming a barrier between the black and khaki green. The fifth print, centred beneath the brighter print number 2, is also fairly light and airy, with the rectangular space filled with a pale dusty blue. The black border tapers out to the left and right and is rimmed by thin bright lines, a slightly thinner raspberry pink line, then 2 thin lines of white, then lemon yellow, creating a margin between the black and the central rectangle of pale dusty blue. The final 6th print is the most vibrant and detailed of the series. The central rectangular space is filled with a loud cherry red. It is rimmed by a thick black border that begins moving straight up the sides and at about a quarter of the way begins to taper outward. There are 2 other borders echoing this movement, but instead of forming tight layers, there is a space between each line, revealing the loud red beneath. From the centre is a thin dark berry purple, followed by a glimpse of red, then a thick dull ochre orange, then one last slit of vibrant red before reaching the dense black. This space between the lines gives the sense they are hovering above the vibrant and loud red centre.
I mean, some of those, those oil paintings, particularly the later ones, very hard work, very strenuous, because there were several layers of paint. And there was a lot of dabbing, he dabbed with a sponge. And the canvas, particularly those large canvases, they'd be flat. I tried to help him one time, but my touch was totally different. It wasn't the right one, so he just did it himself.
Yeah. And I think often people don't, it's easy to think in sort of abstract works like this that because there's a kind of a clarity in them, that this is easy, but actually this is hard won, isn't it? I mean,
it is, and it's also, it was all done by eye. There were no measuring tapes. Sort of, although it might appear as if everything is sort of well measured, and sort of, it was all done by eye.
Describing the artwork Tapestry, 1982. This artwork is a square woven tapestry which measures 200.5 centimeters squared. The square tapestry is diagonally split by a thick jet black line from the top right corner down to the bottom left corner. The line separates the left half, which is a moss green brown colour, from a muted warm red in the right half. The thick black line moves straight from the top right corner until it reaches the centre and, like a step toward the left, changes the line, which continues on a parallel plane ending in the bottom left corner. At the centre point, where the line steps out to the left, another thinner black line extends to the right in the direction of the bottom right corner. This thin line is short, extending about 1/3 of the way toward the right. It is topped with a vibrant red tip, its lightness and vibrancy contrasting with the muted, warm red beneath. The weave of the tapestry is very tight and rigid. The image is formed by many neat rows of woven cotton, giving a slightly ribbed texture to the surface. It doesn't hang quite flat, with the tension of the weave causing a slight wave along the bottom edge.
it was when he moved to Dublin that he really started to develop his own sort of painting and his own practice. And Poolbeg was very important. It's just the most wonderful spot, you know, right down at the entrance to the Liffey and Dublin Port. And so that was where he got a lot of his inspiration. That inspired him a lot in his early work. Even the moon paintings, you know, some of the early moon paintings of the early 60s, you know, sort of down there, when you're down there and see the moon shining, it's extraordinary, you know. So, and then that developed into his interest in art generally, and he became very interested in the St. Ives groups like Roger Hilton, Terry Frost, and at the same time he was also buying their work, so he was collecting work and also sort of paying attention to how work was being made and developing his own practice.
Yeah, that's interesting, that relationship between collecting and making, and that he's always looking and learning from.
Yes, and all sort of, he had a great sense of humour, but he also had sort of great passion and great commitment, and really interested in trying to get as many people as possible interested along with himself in a very kind of real, genuine way.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this audio description of Cecil King's artwork. This audio description was written and read by Fala Buggy for the Hugh Lane Gallery.